PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to another edition of Vegas Hockey Hub here in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada, on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli, and it is finally time. It is time to go over the greatest postseason in sports. It's time to go over the pinnacle of hockey, and that is the Stanley Cup playoffs. It is when you have 16 of the best teams in hockey. They go head-to-head and try to win Lord Stanley's Cup. And, it's going to be a fascinating time to see, who are going to be the upsets in this Stanley Cup playoffs. What's going to happen to the underdogs? What's going to happen to the favorites? Will the President's Trophy curse go into effect? Will it hit the Boston Bruins? There is a lot to go over with the 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs here on Vegas Hockey Hub. So when it comes to the Stanley Cup playoffs, I'm going to start this out by going to the Eastern Conference, and then we'll get to the Western Conference at the end. So we're going to kick this off with the first round of the Eastern Conference, and we'll talk about the Boston Bruins, the 67-win Boston Bruins, the team that has the most points in a regular season in all time, Boston Bruins. We're going to go over a team that has undoubtedly been the most dominant franchise over the past year, and that is an interesting mark because last year, the Florida Panthers was the Boston Bruins. I mean, you literally have a matchup where you have a team that had the most points last year, the President's Trophy winner last year, going up against the President's Trophy winner from this year. And there's going to be a good amount of people who are going to overlook Florida. There's going to be a good amount of people who are not going to take Florida seriously. They're going to consider Boston as an easy favorite. This is a no-brainer. This is a one-timer. Might as well send Florida home now. But wouldn't it be interesting if history repeated itself? Wouldn't it be nice if history potentially repeats itself? I mean, let's just go back to 2019 for a minute when the Tampa Bay Lightning had the best record. They had 62 win season. They were arguably one of the best teams in all of hockey. I mean, it was just a situation where Tampa Bay ended up getting swept in the first round by Columbus. That only happened a few years ago. And then you have a 65-win team like the Boston Bruins, the team that had the best record in all of hockey. Now, I'm going to go with an obvious pick here, but I'm going to go with the Boston Bruins to beat the Florida Panthers, and I'm going to explain why. Now, the first reason is because of the goaltending. The Boston Bruins, by far, have had the best goalie duo in Linus Ullmark and in Jeremy Swayman. I mean, their goalie tandem has kind of helped the Boston Bruins have the best record in all of the NHL. I also want to point out their defense with players like Charlie McAvoy has helped that organization out plenty. The offense has been pretty consistent. You have a top 5 player in David Pastrnak. That will give some credit there as well. But the main reason why I trust Boston over an organization like Florida is because of the amount of veterans the Boston Bruins have. I mean, the Boston Bruins, you have guys who have been there for decades. You have Patrice Bergeron, who is a class act. You have veterans like Taylor Hall, who's a former NHL MVP. You also have players, for example, that on the surface don't seem like they're going to make that much of an impact, but they spent all that capital, they spent all that picks and prospects to get them at the trade deadline. You have guys like Dmitry Orlov. You have Tyler Bertuzzi. There are players that they have brought in to help them win a Stanley Cup. So on that front, I'm going to say the Boston Bruins, they will beat Florida. And you know what? I'm going to give Florida, I'll give them a game. All right. I will give Florida one game. This will be a 5-game series. I don't see it being a sweep. I don't see it being a dominating fashion. But you know what? I'll give one game to Florida. So give me Boston in 5 in this matchup. Now, this one is fascinating for all the right reasons. This is like the 7th time we're seeing Toronto and Tampa Bay take on each other in the first round. It really feels like for the Toronto Maple Leafs, you're not taking on Tampa Bay. If you're not taking on Boston, you're simply not in the postseason. All right, it really feels like since 2011, 2012, all Toronto does is take on Boston and or Tampa Bay in round 1. So we're getting a rematch of last year, which I'm totally fine with. I mean, this is a Tampa Bay Lightning team and a Toronto Maple Leafs team that has been one of the best postseason matchups year in and year out. Now, I know what a lot of hockey fans are going to be assuming. Can Toronto finally do it? Can Toronto, for the first time since 2004, for the first time since a Canadian can go and get alcohol, can the Toronto Maple Leafs win a first-round series? I mean, seriously, if you are a Canadian, you can go out and get an alcoholic beverage right now. If you're in the United States, you got to wait maybe 1 or 2 more years. But if you're in Canada right now, if you're in the UK, if you're out there in Europe, you can go out and celebrate. And the Toronto Maple Leafs still haven't won a playoff series since then. But you know what? I have some good news for Toronto Maple Leafs fans. I truly believe that Toronto can get it done. I honestly believe that Toronto will get it done. They will get past the 2-time Stanley Cup champion, and that is the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I will explain why I do. Because this is a Tampa Bay Lightning team that isn't as dominant as they have been in the past. This isn't a Tampa Bay Lightning team that had 62 wins back in 2019. This isn't the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions they were in 2020 and in 2021. And this isn't even the same team they were 12 months ago. The Tampa Bay Lightning are lacking in one fatal compartment, and that is defense. The Tampa Bay Lightning have taken a step back in terms of defense. The Tampa Bay Lightning are not as dominant in terms of defense as they were in the past, and that's always kind of been a major issue there. So I will say when it comes to the Tampa Bay Lightning, they are going to be a first-round exit for the first time since that said 2019 elimination against Columbus, and for the first time since 2004, the Toronto Maple Leafs, with help from Ilya Samsonov, with solid top 6 play from Austin Matthews, John Tavares. This is going to be a team that is going to make it out the first round. Now, we'll get into the second round in just a little bit, but the first round getting out for the first time since 2004, that is definitely a reason to celebrate. And if you're out in Canada, especially out in Ontario, definitely go out and get yourself a pint. Now, continuing our first round conversation here on Vegas Hockey Hub, here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. The Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Islanders. The Carolina Hurricanes, I've had a few friends of mine kind of hype up how Carolina is going to be this postseason. They have really hyped up the fact that Carolina is performing better than they have the last couple of years. The last few seasons for Carolina has felt like, they're getting their feet wet. They're getting their experience in the postseason. But now they might make a legit playoff run. They won the Metro. They arguably had one of the best seasons in terms of goaltending. This is a team that had Antti Ranta. You had Freddie Anderson. You even had you had the young rookie goaltender and Kuchkev. So this is a Carolina Hurricanes team that looks solid on paper. But the problem is, I'm not talking about on paper. I'm talking about on the ice. The New York Islanders this season have been about one important thing. The New York Islanders are solid on defense. And more importantly, the New York Islanders and Ilya Sorokin has been one of the top 5 goalies in hockey. I mean, Ilya Sorokin is a game changer in net. And thankfully, the New York Islanders will have Ilya Sorokin. They are going to have some solid members on that back end. And this is going to be one of my only 2 upsets here in the first round. And I'm going to take the wild card team. I'm going to take the New York Islanders to beat the Carolina Hurricanes just based off the fact that I trust their defense. They have a better goaltender, and their offense is on par with Carolina. But because of the defense and because of the history of the New York Islanders, this is also a team that not only 2 years ago had a deep run in the Stanley Cup Finals, a year after being in the Eastern Conference Finals back-to-back years. So I will say for the New York Islanders, because of their defense, because of goaltending, give me New York to beat Carolina. And like I mentioned, I have Boston beating Florida in 5 games. I have Toronto beating Tampa Bay in 6 games. I have this being a 7-game series. I have this being a great back-and-forth matchup between Carolina and New York. Next, we have the Battle of the Hudson. This is a postseason matchup we have not seen in almost a decade. The New Jersey Devils, New York Rangers, it's been a while since we've seen them in postseason action. But the New Jersey Devils have been dominant all year. I will give credit where credit is due. Jack Hughes, Dougie Hamilton, even Luke Hughes coming in towards the back end of the regular season. The New Jersey Devils have done pretty good. You have Eric Holla, you have Thomas Tatar. There is some good talent here in the New Jersey Devils system. But unfortunately, I hate to be that guy. The New York Rangers are Tammy Panarin, Vladimir Tarasenko, Patrick Kane, Adam Fox, Ryan Lindgren, Keandre Miller, and then you have arguably one of the best goalies in hockey in Igor Shesterkin. This is a New York Rangers team that is primed to make a run in the Stanley Cup playoffs. This is a New York Rangers team that went all in this trade deadline to make themselves a Stanley Cup contender. Keep in mind, the New York Rangers made it to the Eastern Conference Finals last year and actually gave Tampa Bay a fight last year. So the New Jersey Devils, I'm going to call this what it is. This is going to be a celebratory, congratulations, you're in the postseason. All right, this is a congratulations, you've done pretty well, you've made it to the postseason, now build off of this for next year. So give me a 7-game matchup here. Give me the Rangers over the New Jersey Devils. So getting to the second round, we have the Boston Bruins taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I'm going to keep this short and simple. The Toronto Maple Leafs are going to get beat by the Boston Bruins in about 5 games. All right, they'll get a game off, but the Toronto Maple Leafs are not on par with Boston. This is a Boston Bruins team that is arguably deep and actually has the deepest roster in the entire NHL. This is a Boston Bruins team that won 65 games for a reason. There's no coincidence that they did. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say about the President's Trophy curse. Oh, what about the President's Trophy curse? Until somebody can show me that it's 1,000% real, that the President's Trophy curse does exist, I'm going to call it for what it is. It's just an excuse for whenever a top seed loses. It's just like when a number 1 seed loses in March Madness. Everyone always goes, oh man, number 1 seed lost again. Well, they don't try to make a curse for it. Let's just call it what it is. Number 1 seed loses, and number 1 seed loses. So no, I've never believed in the President's Trophy curse. I think it's kind of dumb. But to get back to the conversation, I have the Boston Bruins. They'll beat the Toronto Maple Leafs in 5 games. And then in the next side, we have the battle of 2 New York teams. we have the New York Rangers out there at Madison Square Garden, and you have the New York Islanders at the UBS Arena. And the New York Islanders is a feel-good story, and I think the New York Islanders will give a fight to New York, but I have the New York Rangers beating the New York Islanders in 5 games. I think Ilya is going to beat Ilya, and I think Igor will beat Ilya as well. I mean, this is a situation where the New York Rangers will get the job done, and Gerard Gallant will get the New York Rangers back to the Eastern Conference Finals. And then on the Eastern Conference Finals side, we're going to have a very long-term rivalry, one of the best rivalries in hockey, and that's the Boston Bruins and the New York Rangers. I mean, can it not be any better? I mean, the Boston versus New York. You got the Yankees and you got the Red Sox. You have the Knicks and you have the Celtics. You have the Patriots and you have the Giants. Well, now you have the Boston Bruins and you have the New York Rangers. And I will say that this is going to be more of a competitive series than most people are going to give it credit to. In fact, I could see this being a 7-game series. But what I'm going to give the advantage to is the defense. I mean, you got Adam Fox, you have Lindgren, you have Miller. There are some solid pieces in New York. But the Boston Bruins have arguably the strongest depth in terms of defense. This is a Boston Bruins team that has all 3 lines that can get the job done on defense. So for that reason, I have the Boston Bruins, the President's Trophy winner, the 65-win team. The Boston Bruins will go on and make the Stanley Cup Finals from the Eastern Conference. Now, jumping over to the Western Conference side as we predict the Stanley Cup playoffs here on Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. We're going to start with the Central side, and we're going to talk about my only sweep in the Stanley Cup playoffs. You know, the Seattle Kraken, it's a feel-good story. All right, year 2, the Seattle Kraken make the postseason. Congratulations. Here's my round of applause for the Seattle Kraken. I give you a lot of respect for making the postseason, but I don't see you making an impact in said postseason. Let's face it, you're going up against the reigning, defending Stanley Cup champion. You are going up against a team that arguably finished the year with the strongest record in the last 25 games. This is a Colorado Avalanche team that went from barely being in the wild card at the halfway mark to having one of the best records in the West to end the year. I mean, keep in mind, this is a Colorado Avalanche team that mathematically could have had the number 1 seed with 2 games left in the year. I mean, if everything had fallen correctly, the Colorado Avalanche could have had the number 1 seed. I mean, the Colorado Avalanche have one of the best offenses in the NHL. The defense, when fully healthy, is the best in hockey. And goaltending is a bit suspect, but I think Alexander Georgiev will be able to get the job done. So here's my only sweep of the first round. Colorado Avalanche will defeat the Seattle Kraken 4-2-0. Seattle, here's your participation trophy. Congratulations, you've made it to the postseason. Now go home. Continuing our first round, we have the Minnesota North Stars and the Minnesota Wild. All right, we have the battle of the 2 Minnesota teams. And, you know, I think that the original will not beat the new one. You know, I think that the predecessor will not beat its successor. The Minnesota Wild, Philippe Gustafsson, has been arguably one of the best goalies over the last 20 to 25 games. This is a guy, Philippe Gustafsson, who earned his starting goaltendership by just outperforming Marc-Andre Fleury. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury literally did not perform to the same standard that Gustafsson did. Therefore, Gustafsson outperformed and beat out Marc-Andre Fleury to get the number 1 goalie. I also want to mention that the forward depth for the Minnesota Wild, they have a top 9 that is really solid in Minnesota. And the Dallas Stars, if their young guys do not outperform, or to put it nicely, if their young guys do not carry the veterans on their back, the Dallas Stars are going to have a very early exit. I mean, this is a Dallas Stars team without Roberson, without Heiskanen, without Ottinger. This is a Dallas Stars team that's going to have to rely a lot on 24 and 25-year-old guys. So because of that, I have the Dallas Stars losing to the Minnesota Wild in 6 games. So Minnesota, they'll move on. They'll get to the second round for the first time in a long time. Not as much as the Toronto Maple Leafs, but still, it's been a while. Now, moving over to the Pacific, you have Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers taking on Anze Kopitar and the LA Kings. Now, I fully expect this being a 7-game series. All right, there is no doubt in my mind that there's going to be some overtime games. There are probably going to be 4 or 5 overtime games, considering how this postseason went last year. Like I mentioned with Toronto and Tampa Bay, this is going to be one of those repeat matchups we saw last year. The main difference is just like Toronto and Tampa Bay, I see a different outcome from last year. The Edmonton Oilers are being very hyped right now. As a matter of fact, I've seen certain analysts say that the Edmonton Oilers are going to win a Stanley Cup. So I told you on this show I have 2 upsets in the first round. My first upset is the New York Islanders beating the Carolina Hurricanes. My second upset is the LA Kings beating Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers in 7 games. I like their offense. Their top 9 is solid. Their defense is pretty stellar. The goaltending is a bit suspect. I will give you that one. But if you had to ask me who do I trust more, do I trust the defense of LA or do I trust a defense led by Cody Ceci in Edmonton? If you're a hockey fan, I feel like I can stop there. All right, the fact that Cody Ceci is a first-line defenseman in Edmonton tells me all I need to know about how weak the depth is on defense. So, Edmonton, you will lose to Los Angeles. Connor McDavid will not win a Stanley Cup this year. And once again, you had 150 points, and yet you failed to produce in the postseason. And then lastly, in the first round, we have your Vegas Golden Knights taking on the Winnipeg Jets. Now, Connor Hellebuyck is one heck of a goaltender, but he cannot help this franchise. He cannot carry the Winnipeg Jets on his back. Also keep in mind that the Vegas Golden Knights have one of the deepest rosters in the NHL. This is a Vegas Golden Knights team that from line 1 to line 4 is going to be production, and production. I mean, this is a Vegas Golden Knights team that arguably has one of the best rosters heading into the postseason. I give a lot of credit to Kelly McCrimmon. I mean, Kelly McCrimmon, to me, he has done very well with building this roster. I kind of call him a little bit of a genius with how he's built this roster. I'm very high on the guy. I think he's done a good stand-up job. So because of that, and the fact that Connor Hellebuyck cannot carry Winnipeg on its back, give me the Vegas Golden Knights in 5 games over the Winnipeg Jets. Now, moving over to the second round, we're going to start with the Central and have the Colorado Avalanche and Minnesota Wild. Now, Colorado and Minnesota have fought in the postseason before. They've had a couple of battles back and forth over the last decade. But the one credit I will give to Colorado is that they are defiant. The Colorado Avalanche are a team that does not quit, does not give up. They are a Colorado Avalanche team that proved last year by winning a Stanley Cup that they can indeed get the job done. And Nathan McKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog, Mikko Rantanen, Cale Makar, Bowen Byram. There is so many great players in Colorado. That's why they won a cup last year. And as much as I respect the Minnesota Wild, Jared Spurgeon, Matt Dumba, as much as I respect guys like Brock Faber, the problem in Minnesota is that you are going to be going up against one of the most electrifying offenses in the NHL. You are going to go up against one of the best depth on defense in Colorado. So I say that Colorado will be just too much for the Minnesota Wild. This is going to be a 7-game series, but I'm going to give the advantage to Colorado. And then on the bottom side of the West bracket, we have the Vegas Golden Knights and the LA Kings. This has arguably been one of Vegas' best rivals since they were created, and I understand why. I mean, there is a lot of history between LA and Vegas dating back to year one. Drew Doughty with his infamous quote about, we're not scared of the Vegas Golden Knights. They're not going to be competition. That backfired a lot. The fact that he said that we're not going to lose to an expansion team, that was incredible foreshadowing. But let's talk about the actual series. I do see this being a 7-game series. I think the LA Kings are going to push Vegas as much as humanly possible. I could actually see this being arguably the best series in the western side of the bracket. Just like on the east side, I have Boston and Toronto bringing out the best in each other. I think Vegas and LA will bring out the absolute best in each other. Vegas's offense, LA's defense, the goaltending is kind of on par between Vegas and LA, but what I give the advantage to is Vegas's consistency. It feels like the last 20 games, the Vegas Golden Knights find a way to keep on winning. Just when you think Vegas is down and out, they keep winning. They suffer all these injuries. They keep winning. The goaltending, that's a little bit suspect. Laurent Brossoit goes 7-0. They keep winning. It just truly feels like the Vegas Golden Knights always find a way to win. That they will find a way. Bruce Cassidy, by the way, a heck of a coach. But the Vegas Golden Knights have been resilient all year long. Now, the Western Conference Finals, the Vegas Golden Knights, Colorado Avalanche, one heck of a series, but I have the Vegas Golden Knights beating the Colorado Avalanche. I will say the Vegas Golden Knights will move on to take on the Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cup Finals. And here's your prediction. Some people will call it an upset. Some people will call it being a homer. Some people will say that I'm being biased. Whatever you want to call it, let me say it here right now on Vegas Hockey Hub. Your Vegas Golden Knights will defeat the Boston Bruins in 6 games to win the Stanley Cup Finals. Jack Eichel will finally get a Stanley Cup. Mark Stone will finally get a Stanley Cup. Jonathan Marchessault will finally get a Stanley Cup. Riley Smith will get a Stanley Cup. Phil Kessel will add another one to his collection. You will have players like Alec Martinez add one more to his collection. Alex Pietrangelo will add a second one to his collection. Jonathan Quick will add one more to his resume. This is a Vegas Golden Knights team that I think is the most consistent, the most resilient, and is a team that I say is deadly and a team you're going to have to watch this postseason. So my prediction here on Vegas Hockey Hub is that your Vegas Golden Knights will defeat the Boston Bruins in 6 games. And in the beginning of June, there will be a victory parade here on the Strip. All right, they will shut down the entire Strip, and you will have the Vegas Golden Knights have their celebration, have their parade here in Las Vegas, and everybody here will enjoy it. So this was our predicting the Stanley Cup playoffs here on Vegas Hockey Hub. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. Follow me on social media at Vegas Hockey Hub and follow PR Connections Radio at PR Connections Radio. So until next time, this is PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. And continue watching hockey, go support hockey, and go Knights, go.